Dr. Watson, if you'd open us up in a word of prayer.
Let's go to prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for looking over us and let us do your work and with wise judgment and discernment. Continue to look over us in our travels and those who are still traveling. In Christ's name I pray, amen.
Thank you. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order, Subcommittee on Economic Development and Tourism. We'll start off with Department of Community Affairs. If you'd come on up and tell us about what you got. Commissioner?
Which mic do you want me at, sir?
To either one of those. They're all on.
Good deal. Thank you, sir. Good morning, gentlemen.
And if you would, tell us where you're at on what section and so on.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to work out of off of y'all's sheet, which is section 16. I think it's page 1.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you will flip actually to page 3, the first item, and I'm going to skip the common adjustments. I think y'all probably heard on those. So the first item I'll speak to is at 73.4, which is this is actually a house ad of $448,982. I am certain, because you and I have talked a lot about this, that you have expectations of agencies like DCA, an accountable commissioner, a COO to run an effective organization, a CFO to manage an efficient budget. At DCA, those functions are not fully funded by the state. Instead, they are funded through distributed program allocations, with the state administrative portion accounting for about 13% of our overall budget, despite the fact that the total state funds in our budget account for 27% of our budget. In 2017, there was a zero-based budgeting review that highlighted this issue and specifically noted that DCA's leadership was primarily funded by the administrative portion of federal grants as well as other variable funding sources. And it was recommended that we move to a more stable funding or that we identify more stable funding to mitigate future funding reductions. Since that time, we have actually relied on leveraging appropriately, I might add, a number of variable funds, including ARPA, admin, and the like. But the issue has been further exacerbated by employee raises, which were much needed and appreciated. I understand that this ad by the House represents half of the 3% budget enhancement request that we made, which was aimed at helping us to address this issue. And with this investment, this simply will enable us to maintain the service levels that you and the communities that we all serve expect.
Please. Thank you, Director. So is there been any stabilization of that funding source, or is this every year we're going to have to look and see what's come in from those fluctuating funds and then add to it in order to offset?
No, so I think that the recommendation, and again, we're actually going back to when the 3% budget enhancement came out, we looked back at the zero-based budgeting recommendations from 2017, and we're simply trying to address more stable funding. The ARPA funds will all be exhausted by 2025. We understand that. With the increase in the FY23 budget, the $5,000 raises, the state was generous to provide $700,000 in funds. We had to identify another 3.1 in federal funding, 3.1 million in federal funding. I've heard other agencies talk about being able to go to the federal government and seek reimbursement. All of our funding is block grant funding. There's no additional federal reimbursement for those. So, what gives is, fewer visits into communities because we're trying to manage, travel, holding on, a legal position, which we use to review contracts and the like. Honestly, we held for 4 years on updating our website until y'all directed us to do so last year in the budget. That was simply a budgetary issue. We all know that our website needs to be updated. So we managed, this was just simply in our budget enhancement request, this was an attempt to provide some more stability into something we know that we will always have to manage.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
No.
If not, I'm going to keep moving, and I think the next item, which is actually a governor's recommendation, is on page 8 at 79.1, under special housing initiatives. Make sure we're tracking. Okay. So this recommendation is simply that we utilize $1.2 million in existing funds, augmented by, I'll do the quick math, 3.5 roughly million in new funds to address the State Housing Trust Fund. The State Housing Trust Fund historically has been used simply to match federal funds, provide the required state match for federal funds to address homeless initiatives in the state. In the amended budget, I shared with you that last year we were able to compete successfully for an $11.8 million grant, competitive grant, which we required matching funds to draw down. We anticipate that over the next 12 to 18 months that there will be 4 or 5 additional competitive grant opportunities that we can pursue to provide homeless assistance across the state. And so the intent here is for us to have the $4,597,416 that we can use to provide those match to pull down those funds as those competitive grants come about. Just as a quick how we got there, there's $800,000 that in existing funds in this special housing initiatives that we're recommending be repurposed. And then I'm going to tell you momentarily where the transfer of $400,000 in existing funds. So all total, this is $3.5 million in new money plus $1.2 million in existing funds. Any questions on that? Again, this is a governor's recommendation.
Any questions?
The correlative to that on page 9 under state community development programs at 80.3, and I realize I'm out of order, there's the $400,000 that gets transferred. And then moving back up to 80.2, we're also recommending the elimination of $302,087 for state broadband programs, so you don't have any concern that that is something that we are deprioritizing. We're simply shifting the priority to federal funding for our mapping exercise. So that's where the state savings comes from. Not a lesser priority, but simply a shifting of funds. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? All right.
Okay, I think I've got 3 more, and moving to page 10. I don't know if you'll hear from Hunter Hill later. Under GFA at 82.1, this is a House ad for $100,000 to increase funds for the Metro North Georgia Water Planning District. Important. I know Hunter can speak to that. Next page, under the One Georgia Authority, 2 governor's recommendations. First at 83.1, this is a recommendation for us to utilize $6 million of existing funds to continue the rural workforce housing program. The $6 million comes from both $5 million that is in our budget for the Rural Innovation Program, which we have sunset, and we would recommend repurposing that for this to perpetuate the successful rural workforce housing program. And then there's another $1 million in One Georgia disregard in last year's budget that likewise. I think I mentioned this in my amended hearing. We launched the Rural Workforce Housing Program in June of last year. Through the first 2 rounds, we have deployed about $20 million in 9 communities around the state. The impact is out of the gate about 850 for sale starter homes with additional capacity beyond that. We've got about 20 million roughly in the pipeline for the next round. My team is out visiting communities around the state, reviewing those applications. I'm certain that not all of those will move forward. We do kick the tires on all of these and make sure that they're ready to go and provide some technical assistance where they are able. But that's been a really successful program. So happy to answer any questions there.
When you talk about rural, is that outside the 20-county metro area?
So the definition is based on a One Georgia definition. So it's probably not outside the 20 county area. It's probably outside about a 10 or 11 county area, based on population and contiguous county reach.
Because I know in Cherokee, I talked to you about a
That's
while
right.
back, we were trying to do a development for
That's right.
firefighters and police, for our local,
That's right.
so,
and
law
our team.
enforcement folks, and we were trying to get something done and trying to have you help us, but it didn't work out. But
Well, and the details on that, so that would have been an eligible project, and our team actually went and spent time with them. The requirements of the program are that the properties be sold for less than $290,000. So, which is defined kind of across the state as the ceiling on the sale price. That becomes a little bit of an issue for developers, in the Atlanta area, and I don't think that they could get to the, to agreement on a sale price.
exactly. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Do you have anything else, Commissioner?
I've got one last ad, and again, this is a house ad, still on page 11. It is a new program budget called the Accountable Housing Initiative, and you'll see $1 million ad. This relates to HB 1410, which Leader Evstration has introduced. It calls for an accountability initiative to address homelessness. Most of the homeless spending, as I just spoke to, in the state is derived from federal funding, and therefore has to adhere to federal regulations and requirements. It's my understanding that the intention of this fund, or the intention of these funds, would be to make grants to communities to pursue kind of innovative accountability related homeless initiatives in the state. Again, it's directly related to HB 1410.
Okay. Well, we're doing a lot on homelessness. That's good.
That's right. There's a lot of need in the state, as we've talked about. So,
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
thank you so much.
Commissioner Wilson, come up and tell us about economic development. Let's make a job announcement. Let's see what you got.
I'm sure we can pull one out of the hat.
Good to have
Chairman.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being here.
Good
Appreciate
to
it.
be here. And really appreciate the work that the committees continue to do to support us. You've been a great friend for a long time. So I'll go through the changes that the House made to the governor's budget recommendation. We'll start with line 125.5. That would be on page 12. So when we came in and met on the amended budget, Chairman, we talked a lot about our overall need for rent. And if you go back to when the state moved our offices to Midtown, and the thought was we would consolidate all of the economic development offices from our partners as well as the state. So if you look at, we have Georgia Power, the Georgia EMCs, Electric Cities of Georgia, all in our building, along with Quick Start, TCSG, University of Georgia, so that when a company comes in, it's basically a one-stop shop of economic development. So we're in the Synergy building in Midtown, on Georgia Tech's campus. We negotiated a very low rate for that when we started. It is now, there's a 2.5% increase clause every year. And so that rate has now moved up to $28 a square foot. The going rate in Midtown is anywhere from $40 to $50
it's still a good
square
rate.
foot. Yeah, it's a fantastic rate, still well below market value. So we have never asked for an increase in our base rate for rent, and so $300,000 basically gets us from where we were in the beginning up to being even right now.
Okay.
And so when we talked about it and amended, the General Assembly was kind enough to add $150,000 to this year. That's very helpful. The $300,000 basically gets us up to a flat rate again.
Okay.
And so that will escalate from here on out, but we're asking for $300,000 to get us back up to that rate. So the House cut it to $150,000. We would like to go back to the governor's budget request of $300,000.
All right.
So then we move to innovation and technology. It's line 130.2. This is a simple adjustment of $25,000 to account for the raises that happened last year for the Centers of Innovation. If you remember, the Center of Innovation was funded under One Georgia since its inception in the 90s. We asked for that to be moved out of One Georgia and into economic development so that they are accounted for just like every other personnel, all the people under our staff. When that moved over, we did not account for the raises last year, and so this is just to true up funds to account for the raises that went through last year. And I do want to say while we're there how much we appreciate the committee looking at making us more competitive by adding continued funding to the personal services. So then I'll move on to international trade. That is 131.3. I don't have my glasses, so I'm having trouble seeing that a little bit. I think that's 131.3. Last year, we were cut by $200,000 in our trade budget in the General Assembly. Trade helps Georgia companies sell goods overseas, and so the state of Georgia has 12 international trade offices. All we did was basically decrease the services that we offered to Georgia companies last year to meet that $200,000 hit. This would help us go back to what we were offering pre-last year. Which is very important because if you look at the companies that are selling internationally, they're mainly small businesses in Georgia and they're mainly agriculture. Peanuts, pine trees, poultry, and pecans. That's really what we're helping companies sell. So that's an important ad for us. So the House
Commissioner,
maintain
do we
that.
actually have employees over there that are state of Georgia employees, or do we farm that out and hire people over there?
So generally, they're
like contracts?
contracted.
Yeah.
So we have a state of Georgia employee in Tokyo, but everybody else in the system is a contract. And in fact, every 5 years we go through a rebidding process so we can make sure that we're getting the bang for our buck.
And they report to somebody in your office? You have somebody
Yeah, they
over
report to our Deputy Commissioner for International Trade.
Okay.
And then Chairman will move to the next section is 132.2. This is a rural section. And so when we were recruiting Hyundai and Rivian, part of that recruitment package was to offer 2 positions for each. One was a project manager to oversee the project itself, the building of the plant, the on-the-ground work. The second position was a workforce position. These are the 2 largest projects in the history of the state, 8,600 jobs and 7,500 jobs respectively. The governor actually came up with this ad himself. This was his, as we were finalizing the deal to go to both companies. This was where he thought we could best make a difference, and that's investing in our people. And so what that position is, the workforce position is a project manager basically to focus on all the agencies and resources that we have in the state that recruit business. So if you think about that person is focusing on TCSG, on Quick Start, on USG, on our military bases. It's also looking at all the community assets. The goal is to make sure that we, the state, are living up to our commitments to the company. And so these are time-limited positions. They would help the company with ramp up, and then the position ends. So that position was requested by the governor. The House kept it, but they moved it to TCSG. And so the reason that it was in economic development to begin with is because it's not focused specifically on one agency. It's focused on all of the different assets that the state has in workforce. And so we would request that we pull that position back to economic development.
Wasn't that part of y'all's contract with?
That's part of the contract. It's in the language. It's, of course, subject to appropriations because we would never commit the General Assembly to something that we don't fund. But at the same time, it is a promise that we made to the company, and it's a promise we made to Georgians.
And we've done this before. Didn't we do it with that Baxter or one of those pharmaceutical companies?
We have done this before.
Where
yeah,
we've helped them ramp up and get going?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Senator, what number is that? 2?
2. I mean, you named them. I mean, but I do want to emphasize that. I mean, it's not. I mean, just in my area where Hyundai is, North Bryan County, Bryan County is the only county that is you can't drive from north to south because of the military base.
Right.
And that's Fort Stewart and of course Hunter and Savannah. And I think the point that needs to be driven home, we have, if I remember correctly, 3,500 folks who finish their service or retire per year, and I think 1,500 of them stay there now. Almost all of them have spouses. Almost all of them have housing already off the base, and the number that want to stay and yet get to stay is really high. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love TCSG, but I mean, I think this person, one of the, others have certainly discovered that military folks, including, my business and Gulfstream, those are great employees after they've done their service and or retired. So I think putting that in the appropriate place is the right thing to do. Again, nothing wrong. But you have TSG in your where you are now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We work with them every day, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Whip?
Yeah, and to the senator from the first, I really am excited that y'all are experimenting things that we've been successfully doing in District 29 for a long time with auto manufacturing, military bases, and other things. Savannah will catch up with Columbus one day. But that being said, there have been conversations with TCSG, and they're comfortable with the.
Oh, yeah,
the shift. Yeah.
Chairman, we work with TCSG every day, and as Commissioner Dozier's been a friend for a long time. And what this person would do is actually coordinate on the ground with the local TCSG college, as well as USG entity that's close. And, so it is more of an umbrella person.
And currently they're funded over in TCSG, and all we're doing is shifting that funding back over?
That's right. The governor recommended
I
it
just
to
got
be
two
with
answers.
us.
I saw somebody's head bounce around.
Well, the governor
yeah.
recommended it be with us.
Right.
And then the House moved it to TCSG, and then we just asked that it move back.
Okay,
That's it.
good deal. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else, Commissioner?
We've got a couple more, Chairman. So 102.3, this is an increase of personnel funds for a position that we've requested. It's a site development specialist for the department that we would put under the rural team. It's 132.3, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I don't have my glasses on. I missed that one.
And they cut it $100,000?
So they cut it $100,000. This is a person specifically to help us develop new sites around the state of Georgia. We're really a victim of our own success. We have really filled up our best sites, and we need somebody specifically with a background in real estate to come in and help us find better sites, and really to help communities understand what they need to be looking for. I think that's just because you have land doesn't mean you've got a good site. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're where we are now, where we're submitting basically the same handful of sites over and over again for big projects. As those sites continue to get taken off the market, our ability to continue to be competitive gets less and less. So
What are your thoughts on data centers going to rural Georgia if they can get the power and
if they can get the power in rural Georgia, it's perfect.
Yeah.
They're not major job creators, and so it doesn't have the same draw on the region that a data center in the middle of a major area where you're competing with a manufacturer should go. My issue has been that, of course, we would love data centers to be here as long as they are not competing directly with a major manufacturer and job producer, because I think the job producers should take precedent over over just a major energy user.
Right.
But if you are able to locate in Southwest Georgia where there's capacity on the grid and a need, I think that's great.
Yeah. They do produce construction jobs when they build them.
Sure,
But-
absolutely.
But you're right about the jobs, long-term jobs.
I mean, Georgia.
But I will tell you this, when I was on the city council in Alpharetta, we used to love to get that franchise check from Georgia Power.
I'm
We
sure.
used to, those
I'm
data
sure.
centers used a lot of juice, and we made a lot of money. The
Yeah.
city, they'd bring the big cardboard check and give it to us, and it was, we loved it. So,
There's nothing like a big cardboard check.
yeah.
Jim.
But,
But I do think that the state has forever placed. If you look back at when Zell Miller created our incentives really are based on creating jobs because that's the best way
Yeah.
to change somebody's life or to change a community. And so we have a long time placed priority on job creation. I think that stays within our policy view of how we should do economic development.
Thank you.
Chairman, then one more add to our program. We have a transfer of funds from One Georgia Authority program of rural development funds, moving that into our agency, that $450,000. This is, again, moving personnel out of One Georgia and moving it to our department. It's 132.998. 450,000, and so we'd like to maintain that. I think that's a good policy to keep personnel out of One Georgia. And then finally, there's one highlight on under tourism, 134.3, transfer funds from tourism departmental administration program to align budget with expenditures. And this was money that Todd Gross and the Georgia Historical Society got put in last year for maintenance of markers. That was disregarded in the veto process after session. The governor, in his budget, moved those funds into our rent. The House moved it out. And then they have redirected that back to Georgia Historical Society. So, we would, however you decide to deal with that, it's up to y'all, but I just wanted to highlight that was a change. And other than that, that's all we have.
Any questions of the commissioner? Commissioner, thank you for all you do. Appreciate it. Yes.
The site development. Is there no one doing that job now?
We have nobody doing that job now. We've always kind of farmed that out to local communities to hire engineering firms, and Thomas and Hutton has done a great job around the state, but we need somebody with some experience, and that's why the House cut that from a $200,000 ad to a $100,000 ad. A $100,000 salary is $60,000 for us, right? So we're not going to be able to find anybody with any experience for $60,000 a year. So we'd like to see that back up to 200.
Well, I think that's where it needs to be with you guys, because I've got a rural county that they need the expertise in
Yeah.
there to do it, because it's not getting done on the local level.
Right.
In the way it should be done. So I really appreciate y'all pushing in that direction.
This is something that we have to do, and our surrounding states have done this. They've led with this, and so in Commissioner Nunn's budget, the governor has talked to us about using some of the funds that were put into One Georgia to create a specific site fund so that communities can apply for grants, kind of the but for utilities, but for a curb cut, but for water and sewer. You think about what, we're not able to win a project because of this, that we can start to close that gap on some sites too. So this person would manage that program.
Great idea.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
Committee, appreciate y'all.
We'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chairman.
All right, Mr. Poe, come tell us about what's happening at the World Congress Center. How's the hotel doing?
Doing well, doing very well. Thank you
Good.
for asking. Yeah, we opened up officially earlier in January and going gangbusters right now. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing us to be a part of your meeting this morning. Our item is in the bond budget. It's It's on page 136, item 4552. It's a $10 million
Wait, hold-
recommendation.
Which item now?
It's item 4552. And it relates to escalator and elevator renovation and replacement
Oh, it
on
says-
page
yeah.
136.
Where's it at?
Projects.
This?
Under,
Okay.
okay.
Oh, I got it. I see it.
Okay, all right, thank you. So this is and as part of the governor's recommended budget, a capital item associated with renovation and updates to elevators and escalators. When we originally looked at this item as for a capital improvement, we had a series of priorities that we based our recommendations on to OPB and to the governor's office. Since that time, we've obviously heard the announcement of FIFA World Cup, the number of games, and we're more focused in on how the campus is going to be utilized in support of that event. So our request would be to remove Building C, because while we will do some escalators in Building C, we also need to update elevators in the red deck, A building, and B building in response to how the campus would be utilized for FIFA World Cup. So if you look at page 5 in the presentation document, this would give you some visual information as well as project description associated with what we're talking about and some of the challenges that we've had in the past. In previous budgets, the General Assembly has given us funds to replace and update about half of the escalators that we have on campus. We have a total of 66. So we'll be continuing to do that in Building C with the 6 of the more critical escalators there. But we've also had more recent issues with the red deck elevators, Building A and Building B elevators. So we're wanting to use those funds outside of what we would dedicate to Building C to renovate and update those elevators. And if you look at page 6 in the presentation, it just gives you some more information relative to some of the challenges that we've had, from entrapment calls to maintenance calls, elevators down, just a number of issues associated in particular with the elevators in the red deck, Building A and Building B. So these funds would allow us to address that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Pope.
Yes, sir.
I know the elevators are inspected by Commissioner King and his team and all that. Are the escalators also inspected for safety and other things by that same group? I believe they are, right?
They are, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I was tracking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, if you, in the past, we've also provided to you information relative to what we've done on the campus in terms of the events that we've hosted. If you go back in the presentation to page 3, you'll see some of the more notable events that we'll be having on our campus. International Woodworking Fair, which is every other year major convention, international convention, all related to wood products. We do an annual poultry processing convention. Just completed that back in January of this year. Interestingly enough, those 2 conventions based here in Georgia are also part of the exports that are realized going out of Georgia ports through the exhibitors and the attendees associated with those events. One of the more significant events as well that's coming in, actually starting next year, is the Dallas Safari Club. It's a major event that's pulling out of Dallas. They're going through a renovation of their convention center. So they committed a 5-year annual meeting with Atlanta and the state of Georgia for their convention, and it's everything related to hunting, guns, firearms, expeditions, the whole this, sort of soup to nuts for those that are outdoors, people that love that type of activity. And so it's a major convention, one that we're very proud of seeing here in the state of Georgia. I mentioned FIFA World Cup, but I also have to call attention that we've got the College Football Championship in 25. It's the first time it has returned to a city it's been in before, and so we're real excited with that return, and it'll be part of the new rotation that we'll see associated with how the playoff championships are
Where are we at
managed.
on the Final Four? Remember, we had it, and then COVID, it got canceled.
It
and we
did.
kind of got
We're-
shortchanged on that.
We did. We're looking at, right now, we're talking about 2031 as a return to Atlanta. So there's a lot of activities within that whole program. So we think we're pretty well positioned to see them return in 2031.
Well, I don't know if you know, Mr. Poe, but if we do pass the constitutional amendment on sports betting,
Yes, sir.
5% of the funds go to a fund to go attract Final Fours, All-Star games, Super Bowls and such, to give some seed money, because we can't keep going to the business community and asking them for money. They're going,
Correct.
the well's going to dry up.
Yeah.
So this will give a fund for you guys to go out and the Dan Corsos of the world to go out
Right.
and put presentations together and get the big events.
It is, and we saw that and certainly are supportive of seeing that happen, because it is an area that we do struggle with in terms of competing against states such as Texas, where they have a legislative program in place that allows for use of funds to go in support
No,
of
Texas has a big fund, I think, to go after big sporting events, and we need to be competitive in that.
absolutely.
And it costs money to put these presentations together and go out and
Right.
have the host committee go and sell our area.
Yep.
And I tell you, when you have the FIFA World Cup, what that does for our state from a recognition standpoint and putting us on the map, it's unbelievable.
It's gonna be-
it's a big deal. I'm not a big soccer fan, but I've heard it's like having 4 Super Bowls.
It's 8 games
so it's
plus a semifinal is a pretty incredible
Yeah.
program for the state of Georgia to realize, and one that we're very, very excited about seeing come into the state in 2026. One other thing just to point out, on page 4, we're oftentimes asked how much funds do we reinvest back in out of our own resources. So that depicts, since 2002, the Congress Center has put in a little over $164 million of its resources coming off the events that we support, and that's sort of a little over a $1 to $3 ratio between what we've been able to receive through the General Assembly, which we're very grateful for. But that gives you sort of that comparison that we're oftentimes asked about. And then lastly, just to point out some of the projects that through previous fundings that we received on, this would be, I think, on page 9, just some of the projects that that have been completed associated with funding received through the General Assembly, our BC Exhibit Hall, the International Mall that was funded and completed. We're working through the roofing project currently, and that we're making some good strides in keeping that project moving forward. The transportation terminal that's out on top of or adjacent to the red deck parking on and International Plaza have all been completed. And then last but not least is the Signia by Hilton. You referenced that earlier in some comments. That opened in January of this year. It's a $450 million project. It's a tax-exempt non-recourse revenue bond financing structure with that. It's open to great fanfare and good results thus far. We're pacing with our budget this year ahead of the pro forma that we had put in when the bonds were actually sold. And so the business activity that we're realizing from that is really hitting in on all cylinders, so to speak. And then there's some rendering photographs behind that just to give you some idea of what the facility looks like, both exterior and interior. But I will say that the pictures really don't do the actual product justice. It's really turned out much better than we anticipated that it would. And certainly the customers that we've had utilize it thus far have given it a lot of praise in their uses with it. So we're excited to see that finally open up after a 10-year journey to get us to that point. So that would conclude our remarks. Just the
Okay.
one- Again, just the one change would be to remove Building C.
I got you.
On that.
All right, any questions? Number 9, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was your last time that you're coming before
It is.
this body.
I think, unless you schedule another 7 o'clock meeting.
No, we,
Well, I don't give praise lightly, but I really appreciate your solid professional work
Well,
you've
thank you.
done for the state of Georgia.
Thank you so much.
Just a quick comment, just for the record, Chairman said that he's not a big fan of FIFA, but you got someone in the committee is a big fan too, just
Yeah.
to make sure.
well, I just,
And thank you for all you do. And as
Absolutely.
a matter of fact, I'd like to go visit. I know when we had a meeting last time.
Yes.
To go, someone didn't go, but I'm glad
But
that
just,
you'll open.
yeah, we
And soon I
We'd
would
love
like
to
to visit them.
host you for a tour and get a bite to eat there at one of the restaurants. So just please feel free to call on us. We're very proud of it and very excited to see it opened up.
any other
you.
questions, comments? I'll end with this. Yes, go ahead. What, number 11? Yes.
Hello,
Sen-
I'm Senator James.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to be invited as well,
Absolutely.
because I didn't get a chance to
Okay,
go.
absolutely.
New knees.
I understand.
Slowed
No,
me down a little bit, but
I can appreciate
I would
that.
like to.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. We'll follow up with you on that.
Well, anything else? I'll just say this, Mr. Poe, I've been on that World Congress Oversight Committee since I was a freshman. Casey Cagle put me on that, and now I'm chairing it for you. And so I've been pretty involved in the World Congress Center, and to watch what you've done and your vision for the hotel, that's your legacy. And I just want to thank you for your work and what you've done for the World Congress Center. I tell people all the time, it's an economic engine. It is one of our big economic engines, just like the port and the airport. But now with that hotel, and I think that's going to be a catalyst for growth around there too.
absolutely.
And I think you'll see a halo effect from that hotel investment. So, and that was something you wanted. I remember when we flew up to Chicago and you started talking about a hotel, and some of the board members thought you were a little crazy, but it worked out.
That can happen.
And you've done a great job, and you steered the ship. So thank you very much for all you've done, and want to wish you well in your retirement. Hate to lose you, but I'm happy for you, and thank you for what you've done for us
Thank
in
you
the
very
state.
much for your kind remarks. I
you.
greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next we've got Hunter Hill. Senator Hill, if you could come on up.
No offense, but I've got an ag meeting.
Okay.
Talk about marijuana.
Good to see you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good to be with y'all. Ours is pretty simple. I would point you to 82.1, page 10. We have a number of pass-through funds that have stayed pretty consistent through the years. But the number is $1,253,495, and it breaks down to $673,495 for the Georgia Rural Water Association. We grant $330,000 to resource conservation and development districts. And then the Metro North Georgia Water Planning District receives $250,000, and there was a $100,000 add in the House budget for the Metro North Georgia Water Planning District, which we support. We're fine with that. They have expressed need for additional fundings through the years. So that's the 1.253495. That after the House, it's 1.353,495.
Okay.
And then we will take you to the bond package. It's on line 4539. It's the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority state match for the federal clean water and drinking water revolving loan fund programs. And the total amount is $15 million. And the way that program works is the federal government gives us resources into the Clean Water Fund and to the Drinking Water Fund, and we match it with a 20% match, and we've done that consistently through the years. And it's a great way to leverage state dollars for impact at the local level for water and sewer projects. Obviously, y'all funded the $250 million governor's ask in the supplemental budget for the Georgia Fund, which is usually for economic development projects because we can remove the federal requirements, which can be onerous for small communities, and get those done at lower interest rates. But this is very important bond funding to keep the water funding in the state sufficient. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? All right. Well, thank you. That's it? You got it?
That's it.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Easy money. Good-
Yes, sir.
Good job.
Good to see y'all.
Good to see you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for what you do.
Okay, in our final presentation, Public Service Commission. Come on, Mr. Chairman. Good to see
How
you.
you doing, Mr. Chairman?
Good.
Good to be with y'all bright and early.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I'm sorry it was a 7 o'clock meeting, but
Oh, that's
kind of all we had.
That's fine. We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for your time, as always, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you for allowing us input into the budget process. And we're grateful to the governor and the House for their recommendations of a 4% raise for state employees and for other budget additions in the 25 budget. Thank you also for approving the funds in the 24 budget. This money will help us to effectively perform our duties and stay competitive in the job market and remain accessible to Georgians. I'd also like to thank the governor for the funding provided to all state agencies regarding the statewide common budget changes, which are denoted on your tracking sheets. Since these are across all state agencies, I won't be addressing those directly today unless needed. On our Call Before You Dig program on page 19, line 273.4, in the FY 2025 budget, the governor and the House recommended the addition of 2 Call Before You Dig investigators, and the funds listed in the budget utilize disregarded funds from FY 2024, plus some additional money to finance these 2 positions. As the PSC has stated before this committee on several occasions, Call Before You Dig investigators generally pay for themselves. With our current staff, we can only investigate about 33% of the cases reported to us. So the database you approved in the amended 24 budget, along with the 2 new investigators in the 25 budget, will help close more cases. Although our goals are preventative rather than punitive, these cases do result in fines that are returned to the state treasury. On our pipeline safety inspectors, also on page 19, line 273.5, the governor and the House recommended adding 1 new pipeline safety inspector, and the PSC is requesting that this subcommittee add funding for a 2nd inspector. Pipeline safety inspectors are responsible for ensuring natural gas operators follow minimum federal safety regulations for the safe installation and operation of gas pipelines. This program receives a partial federal reimbursement. In recent years, however, the federal government has increased state requirements, making it more difficult to collect the entire available reimbursement. More inspectors and the new database you approved will help us help protect our federal reimbursement rate. The turnover rate for inspectors has been approximately 50% over the past 10 years. We've got 1 inspector who is retiring and more who have reached retirement age. So these positions are difficult to fill, and inspectors take a long time to train. It takes about 3 to 5 years to get them fully trained and fully available.
So you want to double that number for another inspector?
Yes, yeah, we're asking for 1 more inspector. We've got we're just trying to get to meet the load that we're dealing with, and we need to act quickly to replace inspectors, or we're going to fall behind, and that'll put our federal matching funds at risk.
I got you.
A 2nd pipeline inspector would require an additional $53,011 in annual funding and a one-time cost of $22,400 for the required equipment. So the 24 budget included funds to equip the 1 inspector already, which is included in the budget. Also, as far as the audit of our Universal Access Fund contributors, the $25,000 annualized is on page 20, line 274.6 in the amended budget. The meetings, the commission discussed the need for the random auditing of our telecommunications carriers. Under Georgia law, these carriers are required to contribute to the Universal Access Fund, which supplements funding for our independent telephone companies across the state. This ensures phone service in areas where cellular service remains inadequate. The amended FY 24 budget included $25,000 for one year's audit. This line item simply annualizes those funds to allow those audits every year. The PSC regulates approximately 400 phone companies. $25,000 allows us to randomly audit approximately 10 each year. To give you an idea of the need, in the one audit that we completed last year, the auditor found that 4 of the 10 companies audited had either over-contributed or under-contributed. The aggregate amount due to the fund was $1.7 million that we collected as a result of the audit. Per diem increase for commissioners, also on page 20, line 274.7, Georgia Code allows per diem reimbursement for commissioners required to live more than 50 miles. And the 21 General Assembly increased the per diem rate. This line item just provides the $16,650 to fund this legislative action. The PSC has 2 additional requests. Funding to ensure business continuity. So we have 4 units that we have total, and we request funding to promote existing employees in these units to deputy director positions. For the PSC, which conducts intricate utility analysis and involves complex regulatory duties, this will ensure cross-training, leadership development, and business continuity. We've got several of our unit directors are nearing retirement age as well, and we think this is a good way for us to promote existing employees and make sure they stay with us, and it just provides that kind of continuity that we feel. Particularly our utilities director really thinks this would help us in the future. Also, finally, the cost of living adjustment shortfall. In the 23 budget, y'all included a $5,000 COLA for all full-time state employees. And the PSC has pipeline safety inspectors that perform federal work but are classified as full-time benefit-eligible state employees. The COLA allotment for these employees was reduced by OPB, citing the PSC's partial reimbursement of the program cost. So the PSC has been paying the full FY 23 COLA for these employees. And then in the amended FY 2023 budget, the House and Senate added funding to make up for the FY 2023 COLA shortfall, and then in the 24 budget, both the House and the Senate approved annualizing these funds, but the governor instructed the commission to disregard $63,726 of that annualized amount. So the FY 2024 budget included a $2,000 COLA. Once again, that allotment was reduced. The commission is currently paying these employees the full FY 2024 COLA. We request $41,094 to fully fund the COLA increases not included in the 24 budget. Moving on to the FY 2025 budget, and that includes a 4% COLA. And as in previous years, the recommended COLA has been reduced, and the PSC will be paying the full FY 2025 COLA, resulting in another shortfall of $24,643. So to cover the annualized COLA shortfalls of the $63,726 that was disregarded in the 24 budget, and to cover the next COLA shortfall, which is the $41,094 in the 24 budget, and to cover the shortfall of $24,463 in the 25 budget, we're requesting a total of $129,643. And that concludes all of our budget requests. As always, thank you for the opportunity to come before y'all. Happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions?
Number 9 here, on the pipeline, the call before you dig inspectors, what kind of revenue does that bring in from the fines typically? I'm not advocating to raise it or anything, I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's historically been a pretty good return. I'm going to ask Reese McAllister, my executive director, for more firm details on that. I think he's got some numbers.
It's between $300,000 to $500,000 a year.
Okay.
That program.
Okay.
Obviously, we talked about this on in the last time I came before y'all, but because of the wisdom of the legislature and the governor and everything, all the good work that's going on with rural broadband, it's also created some challenges for us in the Call Before You Dig program, because we are having a huge increase in the number of locate requests, and when you're doing that much digging, there's some things going to get torn up. So we're having more cases to respond to, and we're happy to do it. You know, I'm a product of rural Georgia, and I'm a big fan of what's going on with rural broadband. My kids have benefited from it, and so we're happy to continue to do our part.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't have anything like soccer to talk about or anything, but all I can add to that is we're going to try to make sure the lights don't blink while they're here.
Yeah, good, good. Well, let me ask you just off topic, how's that Plant Vogel, the second, is it coming along?
Yeah, just last Friday, as a matter of fact, they started syncing it to the grid, which that's the level of criticality. That's the final, that spurs the final testing. So it's actually splitting atoms, producing energy, syncing it to the grid. So over the next few weeks, that power will be ramped up, and that synchronization will continue. But I was sent a picture last Sunday that someone took up there, and it showed the steam coming out of all 4 cooling towers, and it was pretty cool to see, because obviously that's been a pretty painful process.
Yes. Number 2?
Just point of clarification, I mean, so we had 2 originally. Number 3's been online for...
Since July the 31st of last year.
Okay, so over a year.
That was the date that it was certified in
Not
commercial.
quite a year. And then this is number 4 and is hooked up to the grid, and it's just a matter of ramping up.
It's not been certified in commercial operation yet, so the final testing and the synchronization to the grid is occurring now. So that process will most likely take, if you judge by how long it took with Unit 3, I would say probably, at least by June, but most likely sometime in May is when we'll reach 100%.
So number 3 is online, and number 4 will be online by summer.
Yeah, and sometime in this next quarter.
Great, thanks.
And that'll make it the largest nuclear generating plant in the world.
Let me ask you another question, because and this again off budget topic, but just to kind of piggyback. We're the 8th largest state in the country now, and there's predictions in the next 6 to 8 years we'll be number 5. We'll probably be the 5th largest because we're growing so fast. I mean, are we good with our power and to keep up with all this growth? And the commissioner and the governor are always announcing jobs, and it's good. I mean, the economic development in the state's been phenomenal in the last 4 years. How are we doing as far as making sure the grid and the power structures in place to?
Well, I think that part of our secret sauce in Georgia has been our reliable infrastructure and our grid and our competitive rate structure that's been very difficult to maintain in this environment. And I'll tell you, it's going to be a challenge because we're experiencing this generational type growth that's unprecedented. So it's creating some challenges for us. I mean, I think that's going to be the focus of our job over the next few years, is to maintain that reliability. And then you've got cyber issues going on as well. But yeah, the fact of the matter is we are in the middle of an IRP update, which is our generation type cases. Georgia Power filed it last year, and we've had our second set of hearings last week. We went, when y'all were going late on crossover, we were going late over there till 9 p.m. and trying to finish on Friday. We went back in early Friday and started, and there's some strong differences of opinion in the case. I think there's 17 interveners in the case, so it's pretty much everybody out there has a voice, and everything's getting on the record. Our staff, our public interest advocacy staff, had 4 separate panels up last week. We spent a full day just on those panels. And so the challenge is like I said, making sure our load forecast is accurate. That's where really the biggest question lies, is how much faith we can put into these load forecasts, because there's so much of this is speculative. We don't want to overbuild. We don't want to put upward pressure on the ratepayers. So that's our focus, is making sure we meet the mark and meet the demand and keep up with the growth. And it's not just Georgia Power. I mean, Oglethorpe and the municipal systems out there are going through these same challenges, and they're adding generation. I think over the next 10 years, you're going to see possibly the size of the load and the grid in our state double. That's the kind of growth we're seeing. It's unprecedented.
Really?
And we're trying to grow our renewables as well. And there's a lot of the interveners I mentioned, they're pushing us to do more and more renewables. But the focus is you've got to have that dispatchable base load power. We've got those 2 new nuclear units that no other state has, and that's helping us. That's helped us get to the point where we're at. We wouldn't have recruited these kind of industries. That's part of our secret sauce. They know we've got that base load reliable generation for 60 to 80 years. But we need more than that, and it's going to take all decks on hand. It's going to take natural gas. It's going to take renewables. It's going to take battery energy storage systems and that new technology. And it's going to take money. But the good thing is it's also, we're increasing the customer base for all of our electric utilities in the state, so revenues will increase to the point where that's where we want to make sure that the revenues meet the demand so that it's not putting upward pressure on the ratepayers.
One final question. What are y'all doing on hydrogen? Is there any plan on that? Because I know the
Yeah,
government put
there's-
some money in the budget for hydrogen.
There's a pilot going on with that. I know Southern Company's looking at a lot of stuff with hydrogen right now. Our own Commissioner Eccles is sort of our in-house hydrogen expert. He's doing a lot of research. Our national association, NARUC, we call it, we're working on that. There's a lot going on with hydrogen, but as far as where we're at today, hydrogen is a new technology. It's expensive. It's not there yet.
Just a couple of follow-up there, sort of opened up a can of worms, didn't you? Just 2 questions. One, do the data centers take as much energy as they're saying? And number 2 is, we built 2 large nuclear reactors. Are the smaller ones, are they options? Are they as good as they sound, or is there some cracks in that?
Well, it's kind of yet to be determined on the smaller modular reactors. There's some activity going on across the country. I don't think anybody yet has started building. TVA's looking at it pretty strongly. Other countries are looking at it. I think that is the future of nuclear. I don't see us going out and building any more AP1000 Westinghouse reactors.
Yeah.
It takes too long, and that's why nuclear is not really the solution to this energy crunch we're dealing with, because it just even the smaller advanced modular reactors, they're going to take 5 to 6 years to build. Whereas you can go out and you can build a gas generation plant in 16, 18 months, if I recall correctly. And our state is number 6 or 7 right now in solar. Oglethorpe and Green Power EMC, the division of the EMCs, is number 1 in the nation right now in solar. So, but I think what the posture that our utilities in this state in with regards to the smaller advanced modular reactors is sort of wait and see what some of these others do and see how they do with it before we move forward with that. And as far as the data centers, that's a great question. That's something that Chairman Huffstetler and I have talked about. So when we had the first set of hearings on this IRP update in January, we found out through that set of hearings when Georgia Power put up their panels that approximately 80% of this new load forecast that we're dealing with, which is pretty enormous numbers, about 80% of it is contributed to the data centers. They're coming our state. They really like Georgia, obviously. So we've got to figure out. I know there's a lot going on in the legislature with y'all looking at what the policy needs to be with regards to data centers and the tax policy moving forward. But it is, just to give you an example, I'm told there's one data center customer that's looking to build 3 new campuses. These are the big mega data center facilities that are, million square foot warehouses full of computers and batteries and air conditions. That one customer is the load, it would be over 1,000 megawatts. Okay, that's one unit at Vogel. That's equivalent to the amount of power to power 500,000 homes and small businesses.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's basically your amount, because you get roughly half of that power from those 2 units, the contract, the EMCs. So basically, it would cover
That's right.
everything you guys are getting off of both of them.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Mr. Chairman. It takes, those are 1,100 megawatt reactors, but it takes 80 megawatts to run them. So you're looking at 1,020 megawatts of generation going back into the grid, and Georgia Power owns 45.7%, and then the rest of the Oglethorpe and the munis own the rest.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I know we got a little off the budget just to ask you these type of questions, but they're important, and I would just close by saying this. We kind of take it for granted. We just get up in the morning, we turn our lights on, and the lights come on, but there's a lot of work and a lot of planning and a lot of infrastructure, and we appreciate all you do, and thank you for all your work and making sure we have good, reliable energy.
We appreciate the opportunity, and y'all know where we're at. We can talk all day about this for sure.
Well, thank you. Any other questions, anything else before the committee? Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all very
Appreciate it.
much.